There is only one physical world ever, but there is an infinite amount of perspectives that could come from a billion people. So, I'd like to suggest that one of our superpowers actually that depends on how you define superpower. But to me, one of our greatest superpowers is actually perspective and the conviction that it takes to actually change that perspective. Let's dissect the sentence, or rather, I'll give you a concrete example so that so that we could preface or that we could intro this concept that I'm trying to suggest. So, think about a memorable day, or when was the last recent good day, quote unquote, that you had. So it everything was going smooth, everything was going perfect. Things were going the way you planned, and it was just so good. It was so memorable that you've thought about it for days now, for even weeks, or for even years. Now, would you agree with me if I said that good day could be turned bad if you just convince yourself hard enough, like super hard, just sat there and just talked yourself out into thinking it was a good day and just convince yourself that it was a bad one? You could, right? Think about maybe how you spilled coffee on your shirt that day. Or maybe how you stepped on some bird poop or something. Or maybe there was too many people, it was too crowded, etc., etc. You would compile all these negative aspects of that day and convince yourself hard enough that that good day was actually a bad one. And that's an example of you exercising your superpower, which is perspective. Now, you'd argue, Deeps, that kind of sounds obvious. That, we could change our perspective on anything. Yes, of course, it's obvious, but you'd be surprised how much depth there is and how much more there is to dissect in that statement that I just, or concept that I just conveyed right now, which is perspective. There is so much power involved in us dictating how something affects us. Because if you heard the starting line, right, which was there's one physical world, the world will unapologetically, with no debt to anyone, no debt to anyone, no obligations to anyone, it will present itself how it will present itself, right? The events and phenomenon that happen in your life, they happen. They just happen. They present itself how they want to present themselves, and that is set in stone because it's just flowing through time. All these things that are happening in our lives, but what isn't set in stone is how you dictate yourself, how you see that thing. You dictate yourself how that thing affects you. You dictate yourself how that situation or that event overall can provide you with an avenue to learn something from it or to make it into a fruitful situation. And all that takes is just for you to sit down and theoretically, of course, figuratively speaking, it's for you to just sit down and convince yourself hard enough for you to change your perspective on something. And if you're not familiar with it yet, I'm actually prefacing one of my favorite philosophies of all time, favorite school of thought of all time, which is Stoicism. And in Stoicism, they basically tell us that if we can't control something, we can always control how we feel about it, which is actually such a beautiful idea, since we might not be able to change the outcome. We might not be able to change the fact that something is permanent. We might not be able to reverse the consequences or the sequelae of something. But we could always control and change how we view it, how we view the permanency of something, how we view the consequence of something. And that in itself is so deep, and so there's so much to ponder upon just with that idea alone. Because it's you know it's hard to argue against the fact that there are a lot of perspectives that we have that are conditioned, or maybe we're just used to these perspectives. Maybe we grew into them. Maybe they were socially constructed, or maybe our peers see it this way. So, of course, naturally, we're gravitated to see it the same way. But that's not entirely true. Because in a sense, yes, maybe some perspectives are hard to mold as depending on how long that perspective has been with you. Yes, maybe some perspectives are maybe conflicting with your values that again are conditioned, etc. But at least there's comfort in knowing that you might not be able to change what has happened, but you can change what you feel about what happened. And yes, it's I'm sounding very, very abstract right now, but I feel like this is an introduction to the ideas or these concepts that I want to convey in future entries. Because if you'll notice, you will notice rather, that a lot of the ideas that I want to present revolves around us trying to see how it can be of use to us. And I'm not it's not a call for you to, like, suppress your emotions or something, or maybe ignore your emotions so that you could maybe turn something into, toxic optimism, which I'll talk about in a future upload. So, yeah, what I'm saying is I'm not asking you to suppress what you feel about a situation so that you could, force yourself to see it as positive. It's not that. It's more than that. It's you questioning yourself as to what the best perspective there is that would yield the best lesson from it, or the best the most fruitful path of how you could view something. So yes, it sounds a bit abstract right now, but I hope I'm instilling the foundation of what I want to talk about in the future. Because it's important that we are aware of this superpower, and that we are aware that we could use this in everything that we do, in everything that we experience. So, if you're listening to this by any chance, I will expound more on this. But for now, please do know that nothing is set in stone, even if it's permanent, because you could always see something out of it. You could always, see something that you wouldn't usually see, but with just a little push, or a little push of reflection, will make you realize that there is so much more to something, so much more depth to what we would usually allow ourselves to see. Yes, I do sound like a crazy old man right now, but it will make sense, I guess. And this is actually one of the most things I'm passionate to talk about in, with my friends sometimes, and with myself. I'm passionate about our ability to change our perspective, because we may not be able to fly, or we may not be able to, have super strength, but we are able to dictate and be the own authors of our perspective and our emotions. So I will talk to you in the next one.